Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you very much. They've already introduced me. My name is Cesar Mahangwe. I am responsible for a number of portfolios. One of them is substance abuse. The second one is gender-based violence. The third one is social crime prevention programs. Before I go further, let me greet our Honorable Deputy Minister, our DDG, CEO, all the distinguished guests and protocol observers. Colleagues, I don't know how to even describe how I feel, because I came here with a lot of assumptions, not knowing really this environment, how it is, because I never got involved with you before. So it is my first experience, and the session that I went through really opens my eyes. You know, sometimes you're invited to forums, you go there as a so-called expert in terms of issues that you're dealing with, but also find that you're the one that is going to learn. So I've learned quite a lot. I'm excited to go back and give feedback to the entire, cluster that deals with this matters, so that we are able to, make sure that you don't leave you behind, but you move with us as a country. So yeah, I've been given 15 minutes. I'll run through the presentation. I'll skip some of the slides. Can you go to slide 7, please? Maybe before I even start with my presentation, can I get a sense how many people are aware of the National Strategic Plan of Action on Gender-Based Violence in this room? Aware of it? About 2. Okay. Yeah. Really, we left you behind, and we really want to apologize for that, because the National Strategic Plan of Action, we call it a blueprint. It's like a Bible. It's our Bible. Whatever that we do has to be, find space and expression within that. And if key sector like your sector, they are not involved, they are not aware, it's very sad, because it means we are saying there's quite a lot that we need to do. So we have this, maybe just a quick one, the history, how it started. It started in 2018. The journey started in 2018, not the issue of gender-based violence. It has been a pandemic, even though we call it a second pandemic. Actually, it is the first pandemic before COVID. But the whole issue for us as government to really look at it, it started in 2018. In 2018, what happened? We had women, from all walks of life came together, established a movement called Total Shutdown in 2018. They marched the street of Johannesburg or Pretoria, and they came up with 24 demands. One of their demands was that there must be a presidential summit where we have a conversation and talk about this, because it's a national crisis. Women are dying, children are dying every day, and nothing has been done. So out of that, they demanded to see the president. The president was there, availed himself, and then out of that, a steering committee was established, an intersectoral committee, both from government as well as from civil society. Then that steering committee planned a first presidential summit. It happened on the 1st and 2nd of November in 2019. We had over 400 actually delegate organizations who were there. The delegates, we had about 1,500 if I'm not wrong. And then out of that process, we had a declarations where we all signed and commit ourselves and say, these are the things that we're going to work on and make sure that we achieve them. Out of that process, then we developed the NSP, which we call the National Strategic Plan of Action. Some call it a purple book because it's purple, but yeah, it's the book that really says we are not talking about one department here. We are talking about a collective. We are saying who needs to do what in order to bring about change. Next slide. So the Purple Book, or the NSP that was established, this is what it managed to achieve. It sort of like came up with 7 pillars and say, for us to move forward as a country, these are all the 7 pillars that we need to contribute, not as individuals, but as sectors. The first pillar, it talks to accountability, coordination, and leadership. I was trying to apply these pillars to the setting because it's a new sector that we've never worked with. And I think we are relevant. We will be able to contribute to all the pillars. The first pillar talks about accountability, coordination, and leadership, like I'm saying. Basically, this pillar, it calls for accountability. It says people that are charged with the responsibility of taking care of organizations, with the responsibility of taking care of communities, they must be held accountable as far as the gender-based violence issues are concerned. There is no way gender-based violence can happen in a space and nobody is held accountable. People must be held accountable. This is the call. So we had the second summit, I think 1st and 2nd again of November, where ministers were called to account and say, from your section, police, tell us why there is still high levels of gender-based violence. What has happened? DSD, tell us how to ensure that psychosocial services, are easily accessible. Justice, tell us how far are you with, legislations and so on. So this call is not only to government, it's a call for everyone that is in leadership. As long as you are rendering you are in that portfolio, you are expected to really call people for it. So my recommendation in this forum, I would say, I've learned you have a authority called SAMSA, SAMSA, yeah. SAMSA is already there, it's a structure, you don't have to do anything. All what to do is just to establish a subcommittee that is going to hold everybody in the space accountable. They can do that. The mechanism is already there. All you need to do is just to establish that and say, this is how you do it. You will call them from time to time and say, tell us, how are you fighting GBV in your space? The fact that people are not reporting is not true. It is happening. Remember, this is a private thing for other people. People are still not comfortable to talk about. So we must not be comfortable and say, I don't have stats. No. Actually, we should be worried that people are not coming out and telling us how they are going on. That will be my recommendation for Pillar 1. Quickly for Pillar 2. Pillar 2 is about prevention and rebuilding social cohesion. We are saying we can come up with responsive legislations and policies. But what is important is prevention. It's prevention and dealing with all those toxic masculinity. Deal with harmful cultural practices. Those are the things. So this pillar is led by, I forgot to mention Pillar 1, who leads it at a national level, is Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability. However, they are not alone, they are with everyone. I'm just talking about the leads department. So for Pillar 2, it is basic education, where they're saying it must start at a primary school, this issue of gender-based violence, not at a higher level where people are already socializing in a different way. So their focus is more around prevention, is to say, how do we keep conversation going? How do we keep, this matter, we must not hide it, we must talk about it, we must create that awareness. I heard the second panel, they were talking about their organizations, that the fact that there is, what did you call that office? The one that deals with mental health issues. EAP. Yes, it's well and good to have EAP, but EAP is not effective. It's not, because it's not keeping the conversation going, it's not creating that awareness. It waits for people to be victimized, then they go to them. That's not what we want. What we want to be active on the space, talk about it, just like HIV. You remember how as a country we rally around and deal with issues of HIV. Everybody began to talk about it, everybody began to, so it's the same thing that we are looking for. We are saying, let's talk about it, let it be open, let those who are perpetrating gender-based violence feel uncomfortable in our space. For as long as it's a private matter that happens between me and my therapist, it's not going to work, because it will continue. People would take it as a private matter. So with this, what we are trying to say, we are saying, let's elevate it, let's talk about it, let it be something that is out there. So for us, for Pillar 2, we are not leading, but we are contributing a lot. We work with various sectors, and would like to work with you, working with traditional leaders, because in rural areas we've realized that they've got so much authority and respect. People listen to them, so we are training them so that when these matters come to them, they can act on them. They're not saying, no, go home and resolve it. No, they deal with it and they know what to say and where to refer. We're working with different sectors. We're also working with a religious sector, because it's also happening in that space. There's a lot of victimization that happens in that space. So we are training pastors to say, this is the issue of submission, headship, and so on. All these concepts that really keeps women in bondage. We begin to talk about them and set people free with information. So we're working with different sectors. So we'd like to work with you as a sector and say, how do we really create awareness campaigns with you? How do we make sure that there's conversation around these matters? The third one is Pillar 3, which is led by justice. This one is about reforms. We are saying we can do this, we can hold people accountable, we can have prevention program, but as long as our legislations are not responsive to what is happening, we will have a problem. We all know the history of this country, that a lot of effort after 1994 was around perpetrators having rights, making sure that their rights are protected. They go to prison and they get education and so on. But victims were left behind. Victims were not the center of justice. Now, with all our legislations, the new amendments, we are saying we want to put the victim right at the center of justice system. Victim must have rights. They must be able, if you are a victim, I go to court, I should be able to access a legal representative without really relying on the state. These are the things that the three legislations, I think the DTG earlier on alluded to the three legislation. Yes, those are the new reforms that we're looking at, and we are looking forward to implement the legislation. I know that we've been criticized as government that we're very good in coming up with legislation, but when it comes to implementation, it's zero. I want to say we want to change that narrative. We are going to implement because it is in the best interest of the victim. Over and above that, as a department, we've worked on a number of legislations. There are three key legislations that we're working on that we're trying to respond and deal with issues of gender-based violence. We have the Children's Act. There's a whole chapter that talks about child protection, so it does address these issues of gender-based violence. We've also amended an Older Persons Act. It has a portion that deals with older persons that have been killed, as sometimes they are alleged to be victims of witchcraft. Some of them, they are raped because they stay alone and so on. So we have a section around that. The last one is Victim Service, VSS. It's a bill that talks to the whole issue of gender-based violence. So those are the legislations that are before cabinet, and we are hoping to close them before the end of the financial year. That's how we're contributing to Pillar 3. Pillar 4, it's a pillar that Department of Social Development, my department, is leading, which is response, care, support, and healing. Basically what we are saying, now that people have been victimized, do we have responsive mechanism? What is it that we have in place that would really respond to their needs? Secondly, what care and support system do we have? Because we understand that this is a journey. Even if I access a trauma counselor today, it's not going to end today. It's a process. What are the support systems, mechanism do we have in place that assist victims? Finally, healing. We are saying people they've got to go through that process, and they must be healed at the end of the day, because if they are not healed, they will not be able to move on with their lives. So this is a responsibility that we have been given as a department. So on a bi-weekly basis, we are meeting as a collaborative. I heard you, program director, emphasizing the issue of collaboration. So we have a theme called Collaboration Connect. Those are the things that we do. So we are connecting, we are collaborating as a sector. We are not doing it alone. We've got a number of NGOs on board. We've got SAMSA, we've got NPA, we've got health. They are there with us. What do? We're looking at the response mechanism. The response mechanism, we're looking more on trauma counseling. We're talking about psychosocial services as if that service is easily accessible. It's not. It's there. But how accessible is it? How readily available is that service to a victim? Because some of these services, they are there, they work 24 hours. They're not working 24 hours. It's Monday to Friday. GBV does not happen at night. GBV does not happen over the weekend. So those are the kind of the shifts that we are looking at to say, can we begin to be responsive and not really confine the spaces and increase access. We are also talking about training, more of training. There's an issue around they call them cold front workers. You know, the people that deals with victims, for instance, the police, the nurses, the social workers. We have a responsibility to reduce, we call it secondary victimization, meaning that when a person has been a victim, when she comes to me, she must not retell the story, because that is re-victimizing her. I need to have mechanisms that would assist and make sure that she doesn't have to retell the story. So those are the measures that we are trying to put in place to make sure that we reduce the secondary victimization. So those are the things that we do, and we also encourage support groups, because we are saying we don't have enough psychiatrists, we don't have enough social workers and psychologists. But what we have people that are eager, we have people that are interested, that wants to contribute in the space. So what do? We train them. We make sure that we deploy them, and we've got 30 hotspots. I don't know, it may not be applicable in your settings, but with us we've got 30 national hotspots that we're working with, where we try to make sure that services and systems are there. The last two, 5, okay, let me skip 5, 6. The 6 is around research. We've got a medical research council, we've got HSRC on board, and many other research institutions. What we have learned in the process was that whatever the intervention that we come up with must be evidence-based. We must know for sure that it's working. Otherwise, we're wasting resources, wasting time. So we are working very close with those organizations, institutional research institutions, to assist us in terms of the programs that we are doing on a month-to-month. Secondly, there's issue of collecting data. You know, we are learning from other sectors, like for instance, the sector that deals with perpetrators. A correctional service at a click of a button, they know how many prisoners do they have a day. They can tell you that. And that helps in terms of resource planning, because then you know that, okay, this is the population I'm having, I need so much. You can do so much with that information. But when it comes to victims, we don't have that kind of information where we can click and say, we've got so many victims a day, therefore what does it mean for resource planning? We don't have that. If we do have, we've got systems that are not talking to each other, they are scattered all over, and we remember the victims, they know there's no one way of accessing us. There are many doors. They can, a typical example, a rape victim can decide to start at, not even at SAPS. They can start at health and say, I need PEP, I'm raped, that's one door. Or a victim can say, I want to go to SAPS, they can go there. Or they can say, I don't want to go to SAPS, I don't want to go to health, I want psychosocial. This is trauma that has happened to me, I need to be contained, that's where I'm starting. You know, or I want to go to church, I want to talk to a pastor, and so on. So they can go to any door. So therefore it's very important that we work together, because the doors are many, and all of us are collecting data, but our systems are not talking to one another, and we are losing people through the cracks because of that. So we are working with the department that is tasked to do that, to come up with a system where everyone will, collect data and send through the data and give us a national picture and say, this is what is happening in the country in terms of what we've collected, and so on and so on, and sharing information. So we are hoping that that system DM can also be extended to your sector, so that whatever the work that they do, they are also able to feed the information, collect data, and also receive whatever that is important. In conclusion, Chair, I just want to really appreciate this and say, no one must be left behind. Today, this is an eye-opener, and from all the 6 pillars, I'm one of the pillar convener for. My other co-chairs for all these pillars, they're not aware of you guys being here, and the good work and the need that we've just got to know about it today. So I will convey the information to them and say, guys, we have left other critical stakeholders, so it's very important that we organize a meeting where we share with you per pillar what is it that they're doing in detail, so that we are able to identify the connections and begin to plan. And we'd also like you to participate in all those pillars in terms of, you know, contributing and so on, and sharing and making sure that you are part of the plan, because on a monthly basis, we write reports to the president. We are reporting and say, President, this is how far we've gone, this is where the problem is. The work that you do, your interventions, where do you take them to? The president is not even aware that there is a sector that, you know, is experiencing these challenges, or this is how they are intervening. So it will be good that you come on board as soon as possible, I think.